The other relevant factors include linguistics consideration and cognitive ability. Linguistic consideration. Research shows that the linguistic and cognitive processes of second language learning in children are quite similar to the first language processes. So the way children acquire the first language, the process is quite similar, or they follow the similar pattern or similar process when they are acquiring the second language. Adults, more cognitively secure because they already had been through this process of acquiring the first language, appear to operate from the solid foundation. And that solid foundation comes from their linguistic understanding of their first language, and thus manifest more interference. The more interference from first language because the very foundation, the solid foundation is their acquisition or their understanding of their first language. However, they cannot escape making errors. Although they have this solid foundation, but still they cannot escape errors when they are exposed to second language acquisition. The first language can be a facilitating factor and not just an interfering factor. So if adults think of it as a solid foundation, that means that it has more to do with facilitation or enabling the adults towards the process of second language, making it more easier, rather causing interference in the process. So it should not be seen as an interfering factor mainly, but can also be observed as a facilitating factor. Factors for understanding linguistics consideration are: number one, bilingualism. Bilingualism, we all know, deals with the study of people being able to speak more than one language. Interference between first language and second language, not only that, but also interference in adults. Then the order of acquisition, that is very important, that how or what type of order which is being followed with regard to children as well as adults when they are acquiring morphemes or any linguistic units. Let's try to understand bilingualism with regard to this particular topic. Children use similar strategies simultaneously learning two languages. So basically, when we are talking about children, we see that they use similar strategies side by side simultaneously when they are learning two languages. They learn two first languages, and the key to success is in distinguishing separate contexts for the two languages. So the excellent part of this process is that they learn the two languages, but how successful they are in this process is when they are able to distinguish separate contexts for these two languages, that languages have different or separate contexts with regard to their use. Then you have the coordinate bilinguals and compound bilinguals. Coordinate bilinguals are ones who constantly implement two languages in one environment, whereas the compound are the ones where the individuals learn the two languages in the same environment. She acquires one notion with two verbal expressions. So you have the coordinate bilinguals where you see the individual constantly implementing two languages, and in the compound you see the learning of two languages in the same environment, but he or she acquires, or the learner acquires, one notion with two verbal expressions. Researchers show considerable cognitive benefit of early childhood bilingualism. They say that children who get into process of speaking more than one language, they are cognitively have the more solid foundation, supported by the Lambert, who says that bilingual children are more facile, more flexible at concept formation and have a greater mental flexibility. So mental flexibility comes from having the childhood bilingualism. With regard to interference between first language and second language, the linguistics and cognitive processes of second language learning in young children are in general similar to first language. They follow the similar strategies, and linguistic features are present in both first as well as second language learning. So we see the process is the same. There's hardly any interference because the process and the similarity strategies which are followed by children with regard to first language and second language, they are quite similar in their nature. Moving on to interference in adults, we see that second language linguistic processes are more vulnerable to the effect of the first language on the second language in adults. Saliency of interference from the first language does not imply that interference is the most relevant or most crucial factor in adult second language, and adults are more stronger in terms of their cognitive processes are concerned because they are already having this process at the back as a foundation with regard to the first language acquisition, and therefore their errors are considered as creative perceptions of second language rules. Order of acquisition, we see that researchers claimed that transfer of first language syntactic pattern that has to do with words and sentences, they rarely occurs in child second language acquisition. So the interference of the first language syntactic patterns, words, morphemes, sentence structures, they rarely occur in the second language acquisition of children. Children learning second language use a creative construction process just as they do in their first language. Now, data about the acquisition order of 11 English morphemes in children learning second language supported this claim. Morpheme, it's the smallest unit of a word, and its acquisition stages are similar for children within and across languages in first language acquisition, and that we look at the order of the English morpheme. They are, the first is present progressive as in ing form in sitting. Preposition is the in and on form. Plural is the s in chairs. Past irregular broke. Possessive is the s with the apostrophe. Article is the a over here as a car. Past regular wanted ed form. Third person singular eats. Auxiliary be she is coming. These are the morphemes, and this is the order of their acquisition. Cognitive ability refers to the ability to carry out a certain task, and that task which is performed from the simplest to more complex level. It has more to do with the mechanism in terms of how a certain task is performed, how we learn, how we remember, how we solve a particular problem, and pay attention rather than with an actual knowledge. So it's not about having the understanding of an actual object or an actual task or any object. It's about how you carry or how you perform that task and how you get yourself engaged in a process of remembering, solving a problem, or reasoning out. So basically, they are referred to as brain-based skills. You have Bloom's classification of cognitive skills in front of you, and there you have the categories: knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And you have their definitions: recalling or remembering of knowledge, understanding something that has been communicated, using a general concept. Analysis is basically breaking down something down into parts. Synthesis is reading something new by putting parts of different ideas together. Evaluation is judging and assessing the values of material. And the related behaviors are defining, describing with regard to knowledge, altering accounts, annotation, calculation, changes. For comprehension, application, applying, adoption, collection, and so forth. Analysis is comparing, contrast, diagram, differentiation. Synthesis, blending, building, change, combine, compilation. Evaluation has to do with acceptance, appraise, assess, attribute, reward, and so on. So basically, knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, these are the cognitive skills as proposed in the Bloom's classification. To conclude, the linguistic consideration in second language acquisition refers to the understanding of bilingualism, interference between first language and second language, as well as in adults, and the order of acquisition, and the cognitive ability, also known as brain-based skill, is something to do with the carrying out of tasks from the simple to more complex level.